Well,
Anyway,
thank you.
let's
Thank God.
let's all let's all greet Gary and welcome him to our club.
Okay, hopefully you can all hear me okay.
Yeah.
Give it a little bit more because I think this is important because all of you have written something in some manner, whether it be real fiction, technical, whatever it is, but you've written something. And kind of history is what preps you for this kind of thing. Now, me, I kind of lead off in a lot of my talks as far as I was born in East LA with Cheech and Chong back in the 60s. So I'm come from that era. Um, Now, as far as like history, that is something that in high school, it was like almost bored. I just wasn't into it. Um, then I joined the Air Force, was 20 years in the Air Force. Um, and I got put up here in the high desert by the Air Force. I was stationed at George Air Force Base. And I moved up here in 81. So whatever that is, 37, 38, 40, whatever, close to there. I can't add, I'm too old. That are not enough digits. And so even at that point in time, I was interested in the history of aircraft because that's what I worked on. In fact, I was talking to my grandsons, and there's an aircraft museum down there at March Air Force Base, and it's like, I need to take them there. And then all of a sudden, we're driving, Shelly and I are driving down to my mother's house in San Diego, and look, it said, we still haven't gotten the kids down there. And it was like, oh, crud. 005, 141B. I worked on that aircraft. I'm in a museum. I'm old. And so it's kind of interesting as we go. Now, when I met Shelly back in 2000, in fact, right before 9/11 and all that, I still didn't really have an affinity for history. I had no intent of even considering writing a book. All my writing was technical writing, procedures, sometimes disciplinary. And then when I got together with Shelly and we opened up the second, well, actually, I guess it's the third, reopened Old Town, Hesperia, Shelly's Place. I'm not a restaurateur. I enjoy businesses. And so on the weekends, I would be in and I just started talking to people. Some of you that have been around here a long time are very familiar with Old Town Hesperia and Shelly's Place. And the question came up in my mind, why is this business or this little business district here? Talk to more people. My interest in the history of the area started growing to the point that people would start bringing us things. And that, in fact, Shelly's had a history of that in general. People would just, ooh, this cute little place, bring her things. But they would bring historic things to me. And so we turned the third dining room into the museum. You could actually have breakfast and lunch in our museum. And that's kind of where I started with all this. Then in about 2009, a representative from Images of America came to the Chamber of Commerce and basically looking for somebody to write a history book in their format. And the chamber, because I'd been around town a while and also given presentations on it, they pointed the young lady to me. And to be honest, when that happened, we went down and we met with her, Shelly and I, at Steer and Stein, and kind of, I was a little apprehensive. I've never written that kind of a book. Yeah, my feet were a little on the chilly cold side, whatever. And so as we talked and learned about the format, it was like, I can do this. Because like one of our local residents here, Hazel Mar Stearns, wrote about her upbringing in the 50s. That was very personal. That she had that personal in-depth knowledge. I'm sitting there, okay, I've been around Hesperia now 10 years, and what the heck do I really know? So we decided, after looking at this format, to go ahead and do this. The format is unusual. I don't know how many of you have seen the Image of America books, but generally speaking, there are about 210 photographs involved in it. Then comes the hard part. They give you 45 or 75 words, depending on if there's one picture on a page or two pictures on a page. And if you think about things, somebody hands you a picture, how do you describe that in 45 words? I can't, fortunately I cannot write down thing and bam, it's perfect. It'll be rewritten about a dozen times, get the words. But this challenged me a little bit more because I not only had to describe it and be very definite or descriptive about it, but I had to do it in 45 or 75 words. And anyone that's known me long enough, although I'm a kind of a shy and reserved person, whether you believe that or not, I talk a lot, especially, it's like I sit in the background until you hand me a microphone. And then you better grab the microphone from me because I'll hold on to it for the rest of the day. But anyway, so we started into this, and it's like, do I have enough in my collection there at Old Town Hesperia? And then I found out about the John Swisher, Myra McGinnis collections that Hesperia Park and Rec had. I was sitting on the foundation, which is an ad hoc committee of Park and Rec, and we're more of PR people. We show our faces around town. There's no power, decision-making, anything of that nature. But I hooked up with Cal Camara and the Park and Rec, and Cal says, oh yeah, let's look into the Swisher McGinnis collection. Let's do some research with it. Very, very happy to help. So I spent some time going through that collection and pulling it out of a closet. And that's kind of where we ended up here in the Harrison building, because I told Cal, as I'm working on this book, we've got this collection in a closet, which anything in a closet, unless you got it mothballed up and it's all that good stuff, set up for archival situations, it can be destroyed. And he agreed. So we pulled that collection out. We brought my collection over here to the building, and I continued doing research here. So the book actually went together in about 9 months. If I had not had a previous 10 years of experience or research, that could have taken, because usually it's about 18 months is what they provide for writing one of these books. So I was kind of ahead of the game in that respects. Now, with writing these, again, each photograph has got 45, or if you have two photographs on a page, 75 words. Very challenging, at least in my way of thinking. Because how do you describe a photograph and give somebody, think about how you write your books. You write in such a way to make it intriguing, interesting, mysterious, whatever, to draw the people in, and then they get into it. And it's like, wow, Rusty's book's really cool. Mike's writing is really cool. And I hate to use the words, and you kind of draw them in. I was going to say suck them in, but you draw them into the picture, and they become involved. And it's really a cool thing. And I basically, I've given presentations, and it's It's pretty much the same thing as giving a presentation such as this. I have got to have voice inflections. As you can see, I talk with my hands a lot. I like having backdrops because I pull from as needed. And I also watch you here and watch your faces and said, whoa, maybe I'm not hitting, looks like I'm at a distance. Jenny, she looks a little disinterested. So maybe I'm not hitting the mark there. So I might have to change tactics a little bit. Now in writing a book, you don't get that luxury of reading faces, that personal face-to-face thing. To be honest, I'm not sure I could write a book such as many of you have, because you develop a story. I developed stories pictorially and then had to write very short descriptions of them. You know, just like I have this photograph here. That's Robert McClay Whitney. That's the founder of Hesperia.
Oh,
That's easy enough to sit there and say, but what's the backstory? So I had to go in and do a little bit more research. And so in somebody reading, if I just said, in fact, like on the tag that's on there, I put that on there because I've got a junior historian quiz here of 10 questions that if youngsters can answer them and they can see all those little labels, it's simple and they can earn a junior historian button. But if I just put Robert McClay Whitney, 1885, founded Hesperia, what does that tell you? It's very nondescript, but in researching back, so I could put it into the book, and again, in 45 or 75 words, he's from Ohio, his family is. He was a lawyer. He was a lawman. He had a gift of gab to no end, something that's not told in the history books, but it becomes part of a story within the museum, as well as if I get guts enough to write another book, a little bit more flavor type, or that he was accredited for putting a squelch on a lot of the Chinese riots. He had a gift of gab, he was gun-toting, and the story goes that here's the riots going on. He didn't have his guns, people run to get his guns, and by the time they got back, he had it all calmed down because of that gift of gab. Now, beyond that, it's like he followed the railroad out here and was buying up property and land and water rights and things. And when he got up on Hesperia, he says, wow, this is pretty cool. And of course, like anything else, I think I can make some money. So him and his brother founded Hesperia, gave it its name, Star of the West or Garden of the West. But even further back than that, the Whitney brothers were founders of USC. In fact, there's a sorority house for Robert McClay there at USC. Now, there you've got kind of a quickie history lesson on Robert McClay. How do you put that in 45 words? I mean, that is, my brain was just sitting there going. I'd write something, it's like 75 words, I need 45. Oh, I'm down to 60. Now I'm down, and finally make it in. I've had Shelley reread it. I've had other people reread it to make sure that what I'm saying is short, concise, and explains it. And yeah, the book is kind of a lead into the museum too. You want more information? Come on down. We'll talk more about it. Some of the things that went on. As you write your own book, you can sit there and say, I'm going to have it 50 pages. I'm going to have it 100 pages. I'm going to do War and Peace, 750 plus pages. That's your decision. And you just write until you feel you're finished. I had to write into kind of a box. Now, it's a very strict format, but I was very fortunate after I explained a few things to have them allow me to make some modifications. Such as one thing here, again, just grabbing off the walls. Hopefully you can see that. That is a trip map from 1912 that from AAA, because again, people look at, y'all familiar with 15 out here? And before 15, it was Route 66. And before that, it was National Trails, which brings in the trip map. Now, I got copies of that trip map in my research at AAA. When it came to the book, I told them, hey, I'm writing this book. I want your permission to be able to use this. Oh, well, for 75 bucks, yeah, you can use it. That doesn't sound like a lot of money, but then when you start talking about this picture, that picture writes to this, that, the other thing, and it's like, this is a labor of love. This is not a, quote, money-making thing for me. I'm doing something I feel that is needed. So what I did in this case, since I didn't have their permission, and I happen to have a little background in graphic arts and printing and using CorelDRAW at the time and now Illustrator, I redrew the map. It was not a AAA map. It was just a basic outline describing the events that happened between, because that, just that map, you think, I know a lot of you have gone to AAA and say, okay, I want to go point A to point Z and give me the map, give me the path. I want to hit these points in between. What that map shows, and again, you have to describe, is you have the John Brown Toll Road, put 1860 to 1880. Then you've got AAA, which follows the John Brown Toll Road or the old Indian Road, Old Government Road, Mojave Trail, all of that. And that came up to the top of Cajon Pass, kicked 45 degrees, cutting across what we know now is Oak Hills High School, dumping out over by G&M Towing, kicking east on Main Street up to Hesperia Road, and Hesperia Road to D Street, and then out through Oro Grande. So it depicts that. In 1923, things changed because I redrew two maps because Route 66 came into being. And so it was officially commissioned in 1926. The maps changed on the AAA in 1923. So those events changed the direction. So there I had to have a few more words than just 75. I had to make a little alteration from an actual document and modify it in such a manner that it was accurate, but it's not, I'm not copying. I'm doing my own thing and explain that transition. Now, one of the other things, how many, well, I know this is hard to answer, question back, a song called Heading for Hesperia, sung by FX McDonald. We put a picture of FX with a little record and stuff. And again, here's 75 words. But here is a song in 1954-55 that changed the direction of Hesperia. There are far more than 75 words. And so I had to go to them and say, hey, yep, there you go. Mike's got that up there. He's good. So it's like, this is really important. I need the extra words. In fact, my wife and I, we talk about, I'm going to get myself in trouble here. Women have like 5,000 words a day to use, and they use every one of them. Men, we run around maybe 50, and we have trouble using those. So the conversations are kind of interesting. Well, I had to jump into that above 50 words type deal to explain this. And I said, I need the words exactly. Chorus, line, the whole 9 yards. And I need to be able to put it in the book. And this is why. For those of you that have never heard the song, we've got, we play it here at the museum, but there's also copies by FX McDonald's, which is now deceased, out there. But this story, because a couple things. When the song was written, FX McDonald was a musician. He had a little shack out here in Hesperia. He used to do little folk songs. He worked for M. Penn Phillips, selling real estate. His father was a dentist in LA. His father refurbed his office, and all the spare or unused material came out here to build the shack that FX was living in. Well, by FX, his father didn't know dinkety squat about music. FX was the musician. But it was his father that penned the words to the heading for Hesperia. And when you listen to it, and it happens to be by the beat or tune of the Battle Hymn of the Republic, it's talking about heading for Hesperia and leaving your hysteria, taking one big gulp. It is a history book in itself, in one song. And yeah, it's hokey. Believe me, you hear it once, it's hokey. But you listen to the words, and if you know the history of the town, it plays right in there. One of the sayings, and again, we're talking about 45, 75 words to describe something, which is darn near impossible when you really want to do it right. There's a term in the song calling balling the jack. Now, what that means for us today would be pedal to the metal, flooring it. Balling the jack is a railroad term, and full steam ahead is when the balls come out and it's a governor. And you're going full steam ahead, pedal to the metal, the whole 9 yards, heading for Hesperia. So I got through this. I get to write about it, but I also get to learn new things. Our other docent here, Greg, is more of a railroad nut, and I've learned a lot from him. What I don't know on that, and he doesn't know on this, we just collaborate back and forth. And again, maybe not writing in a book, but we write stories or exchange stories. So when somebody comes in the museum, we get to tell them. It's unwritten folklore, but it's not folklore, it's fact, because that's one thing we pride ourselves on is we want to tell as accurate a story as possible. And that's why with the book also to make sure everything's right, I've talked to people and families that go back to the turn of the century. In fact, I'm going to reach across here and grab another photograph real quick, which is in the book. I can't remember what page, but apparently Mike's got it there and he can pull up everything. This one here, we all have gone across the Bear Valley Bridge. That was the 1936 flood. Now, you think about it, as we're driving to and from Apple Valley into Victorville and Hesperia, you ain't doing no 20 miles an hour. You're doing 40, 50, 60 miles an hour. Think about coming up on the back end of that. And all you can read is license plate. I mean, that, again, you can sit there and say, oh, that guy, you know, that rectal thermometer and stuff, well, he's put the seat of his car where that rectal thermometer goes. But there's so much more there. What happens? You've probably read, because there are a lot of books written, like on the Mojave River and stuff. People look at that and sit there and say, well, that ain't no river. That's a bunch of sand. But then you get into how wide is that? How deep are the banks? When that puppy flows, it flows. In fact, one of the things, it's in the book in the beginning, dates back to 1860, 1861. And it's an actual photograph of a graph that was pulled out of some archives. But that is the largest flood in Hesperia's written history. That was 50 inches of rain in 4 days, created 4 Inland Empire lakes. Now, how do you describe that in very limited words? What is significant to our history here in Hesperia is that in 1860 is when John Brown started building the toll road. He had a 20-year contract. Now, again, thinking about how you would write something and describing something, 1860, we didn't have big bulldozers. This was pick, axe, oxen, wagon, whatever means you could. He had a year's work starting up the Cajon Pass, getting ready for the railroad coming, setting up a toll road and access to Holcomb Valley and the miners and stuff, coming down through Hesperia and through Summit Valley. That was a year of back-breaking hard work, totally washed out and having to start again. I hope you kind of seen the picture I'm creating here, that to describe an event in 45 to 75 words is very challenging. And I think that's why a lot of people have asked me, and I'm not sure if I'm going to do it. I toy with the idea of writing a secondary book, because those details are so important to writing an effective history book and giving depth and what I call the history and flavor of an area. That gives the flavor, the back-breaking work. What Hazel Mar Stearns, when she wrote Raising Kate, she was taking her life from 1950 forward and was able to write in all those details. Again, it becomes very challenging. One of the other photographs, pictures across the room, but it's of onion field, a national record of onions harvested on the mesa. And you figure, well, Hesperia, national record per acre? No, but it's fact. But what you can write that, and it's like, that's just one aspect. Now you got to, there we go. Thank you. Thank you. I like you. What happened that year is the farmers, the Tatums, and the Walkers that had the potato fields up on the mesa, they went along and sitting there saying, man, a national record, we are really going to make bank. Let's wait, let's hold off. I see the prices rising. Let's hold off. Prices are rising. We're going to make more money. Well, all of a sudden, by about the time that they were ready to harvest, and actually they became a little overripe, the prices fell. So now here you have on one hand, a national record. I mean, this is history book city. On the other hand, the prices fell. Do you know what they did with those? And a rhetorical question, we could answer questions later. That national record of onions got fed to the cows. It was more financially equitable to feed it to the cows than try and ship it off. So again, turn of events, describing things. One of the other challenges to describe, because again, I'm going to say throughout history, Hesperia has always been a bridesmaid, never the bride, but it's always been about 11 months, 12 months ahead of the game. I see it on my right-hand side. It's actually my left-hand side here. The Hesperia Hotel. Now, I don't know, because I can only see a small section of people here, and I think there's 20 people here today, is that hotel. A majority of us have never seen it. But to think, again, description, words limiting, trying to get, and this is where I push the envelope a lot with Images of America because of the importance. That was a 3-story hotel. Back in 1885 to 1887 when it was built, there was nothing like it in the high desert or the Inland Empire. It wasn't until the 1920s, because of Route 66 coming into being, that anything like it was built. Now, looking at that building, 3 stories. It was actually 4. There was a basement. That was the kitchen. And again, describing that, I mean, that was, I apologize to anyone on this one. That was like a Trump Tower. That's the best analogy I can think of right now. Compared to anything else. It was great. It was fabulous. It was all that stuff. But how do you describe that? And then you think about, in later chapters, I had to sit there and say, this Taj Mahal, this ninth wonder of the world, was demolished. Because one of the things in the research that came up, and it's in the book, you can go back to the old schoolhouse, and I can't, well, the only thing I can figure this out is cheapness. 1883, when the original schoolhouse was built, that was all fired bricks coming out of Alhambra. By railroad up to a point that it could, and then the rest of the way by wagon train and stuff. And that's why the old schoolhouse is still standing. The Hesperia Hotel, as immense as it was sun-dried adobe brick. For some of those that have been here long enough and can sit there and say, oh yeah, I saw that. It was a red building. It was painted red, and that was to protect the adobe clay from weathering. But from 1926 to the time it was destroyed or demolished, it wasn't painted anymore. And that's when people started, it wasn't until the 50s people realized what it was, sun-dried adobe brick. So it was not structurally sound enough to remain standing. And that's why it became a demolition burn and everything else. But again, one photograph, 45 to 75 words. And there's so much more in depth that need to be looked at. And that's why I keep on toying about writing this. And I would be on the arrogant side if I said my book is the big deal, the main thing. There have been several books written about Hesperia, some done as master's thesis, some done like in John Swisher's books. It's covers the Mojave Desert in general, and then small sections. Leo Lyman did a great research and everything else out at the college. Talking with, yes. Okay, nobody, I want to make sure I'm not going too far out on time. Fran Elgin that has archives there at Victor Valley College. There's so much information. It's a matter of pulling it all in And what's really interesting in writing history or other books, you can take one event, take 10 people, like here we're showing, in fact, it looks like it just popped up to 21. 21 people watching the same Zoom deal. We're going to have 21 different versions per se. Well, let's call it 20 because I'm probably the 21st. 20 different versions. They're all going to align the same directions in all likelihood. But you got 20 versions. And so when I look at the variety of books, I read through them because maybe somebody saw something more or different than I did, a facet within that needs to be brought in. Because when I talk about flavor and history, and I'll tell you one thing here, and it's a logo that we use at the Hesperia Old Town Museum. Shelley and I, when we had Old Town, we put together a contest and we put it out to the entire school district, or anything from kindergarten to 12th grade, anybody could enter it. But I gave them some pictures. I gave them instructions to design a logo that depicts the flavor and history of Hesperia. And when everybody else had chosen one, which happens to be the one that we use, I'm kind of an underdog thing. There we go. Thank you. That was done by an 8th grader at Ranchero Middle School. Being the kind of underdog guy, I looked at it and I fought it, to be honest. I really did, because it had Route 66 on it. But I had to set aside my underdog type attitude. And this is what I had to do with the book. And really, well, I can't say I totally set it aside when I talk, because you can probably hear it. But when I thought about it, that was the one. It was the most inclusive of the history and flavor of Hesperia pictorially. Route 66 was something that changed the direction of Hesperia. It basically put it into a dormancy. In 1954, Hesperia awoke with heading for Hesperia. And again, bringing this all into play, setting when you're writing, especially if you want to write a sci-fi, I guess the sky's the limit, or outer space, or wherever else. When you're writing a history book, in my opinion, you've got to be as factual and concise as possible. And as I say, that logo was about as accurate as you could get for depicting the flavor and history of Hesperia. So we've been using it since 2007. I've worked with Sultana High School because we've done, along with the writing, I've done videos, history on Hesperia, and it's an ongoing process. And the more I find out, the more it's kind of like, well, maybe I do need to write a second book. Not really images of America, but more inclusive of a lot of things that have gone on as far as as precise and accurate as I want to be. I'm going to say here, jumping back, and I'll talk about this, but I haven't put it into writing. You take Robert McClay, that we talked about being a founder, his history that we've documented as a lawman, a lawyer, purchasing land rights, all this stuff. But when you talk about what we know is the flume, in fact, again, rhetorical question, how many of you out there are hikers? How many of you been out by the dam? And there's a sign that says Pacific Crest Trail going up Deep Creek. And myself and one of my friends, one of Jim Walker, which his dad worked with the Tatums, we go back there. Here you got to talk about older gentlemen and stuff. And here's a young couple. And we stop and talk to them for a second. And it's like, wait, you guys going to hike the trail up there? Oh, yeah, we're going on the Pacific Crest Trail. Oh, yeah, And Jim and I are sitting there because Jim used to do repairs there. And it's like, do you know what you're really walking on? Not something that was named in 1936, the Pacific Crest Trail. The original water source for Hesperia that goes back to 1885. And where I'm going with this is back in 1885, here you got Whitney, lawyer, this, that, very smart man. But what he crossed in coming out buying land was the Chaffee brothers that started Ontario. Chaffee brothers were irrigation engineers. I can't prove this. I can't write it in a book other than saying I theorize. I have a hypothesis of this, but I have no proof. I think Whitney was smart enough to sit there, oh, there's water here. We need to get here. Oh, wait, irrigation. Hey, Mr. Chaffee, what do you think of this? I would not be surprised at all if the Chaffee brothers actually designed that, because that was all siphon and flow. There were no water pumps in 12 miles. But again, in research, I cannot say this is what happened. I can say this is what I believe happened. It makes logical sense. Just like building the hotel, the anomaly of fired bricks on the schoolhouse built about 4 years before the hotel. Why would these be fired bricks? Why would these be sun-dried adobe out of Oro Grande, the materials? The logical assumption might be in 1886, there about when they hit the culmination of Victorville, you got a bunch of non-working people because the work's done. You got a labor-ready source. Is it not plausible that you pull the materials, that labor source forms up all the bricks, and the hotel is built? Can I prove it? Was it Chinese? Was it Native American? All I can say is, in all likelihood, it was unemployed labor force because the railroad was done. Again, I can't document that. I can allude to it, and maybe in writing a second book, I would have the option or the breadth to be able to do that. I couldn't do anything like that in the Images of America book. So, yeah, it says that, yeah, maybe you need to write a second or an extension thereof, but different enough, maybe self-publish or whatever. Now, in writing books too, people write because they love to. It's just a manuscript, whether it goes for play, whether it goes for movie, whether it goes for just a sale, whatever. There's a variety of reasons. I can tell you that this book, Images of America, was written more as a labor of love, something that a history book is, I'm going to say, somewhat narrow or limited in its audience, people interested in a specific subject, whereas a sci-fi book, a romance, whatever other type book has a broader reading. So the books that have been sold are people that are traveling, want to hear the history of an area. Whatever monies that I make from sales of the book go straight into this museum. It's strictly a labor of love. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would do it again. I guess that's saying that I would write a second book. Isn't that what I was saying? Huh? Yeah, Mike's going, yeah. I know one of the things that I want to do for definite is, now that I'm retired, because I retired in June, is we are working on short videos. Of course, a little writing, scripting, and I've got a bad habit of ad lib. I formulate things in my head, and then just like now, there is no script here. I sat there last night looking blind in the sky, just running things through my head on what I'm going to talk about, and then I start going. But we're going to do shorts, probably about 3 minutes, talking about the historic monuments. Again, referencing back to Hesperia Rec and Park that owns the building here with the museum, referencing the book, referencing postcards, different things that we're working on to support the museum. I've done 3 videos with Sultana High School, and the outline was scripted, not the actual words. Jim and I, yeah, the gentleman, his name just escaped my brain, Stanford. We talked about basically what we're going to do, their thing in history, and we went along with those. So we got a variety of projects that we're working on. In fact, one of the things that I'm pretty excited about, and you'll see some photographs in the book of the train station, the water tower, things of that nature. And again, because it's difficult, if not impossible, to give everything on something. On the outside of the museum here, we got a fenced area with farm equipment. I'm working on getting the farm equipment taken out. I'm about 75% complete on a scale model, about 1/15th, 1/20th scale of the water tower that was here in 1885. We're going to build the rail station, the hotel, the schoolhouse, which it's still standing, but with the way things go and anything else, we want to get a scale model done before something happens to it and it's no longer there. Bringing in water pipe, because it's not a written thing, it's a verbal and visual thing, but we're going to turn that outside into a learning center that we can hold small classes, bring in chairs, and for all the things that you would read in any of the history books, including mine, be able to give something more tangible than a one-dimensional photograph. Something you can sit in there and say, yeah, this is 1/15 scale. Wow, that thing was a monster. In fact, that model that I'm working on for the tower, it's only got a 21-inch diameter on the tower and about 21 inches tall. That was actually a 5,600 gallon water tower. And that pales in comparison to some of the larger things, like in Kansas, they had a 25,000 gallon water tower. But to look at something, and now you can visually see in 3D what we depicted and illustrated in the book. Because as I say, I'm a very visual type guy. I want to see it, I want to have my hands on it, the whole nine. Photographs, even though I blow them up and I examine them because of what I do here, I actually need to do that in order to explain it properly, but have it right in my head so I can explain it properly. I don't know where we're at on time right now, Mike. I want to make sure.
Gary, this has been fantastic. Can we have a few minutes for some questions? Because I know people have them. If you want to ask a question, just unmute yourself and go for it.
Hello. I'm the upside down picture here, which depicts my life, generally speaking. What?
Your name is right side up.
Oh, well, part of me is okay. I just wanted to say that my husband and I came here in 1969 for him to take a job as a teacher at Victor Valley College. And the powers that be that were hiring him, the dean of instruction and so forth, decided to take us to lunch. And at that time, the Hesperia Country Club was alive and well and a really nice place to go for lunch. So they drove us across probably, I didn't know where it was, but probably Hesperia Road into Hesperia. And all of a sudden we had just passed Main Street and they said, oh, that was Hesperia. And we all laughed because there was nothing there. There were 5,000 people in Hesperia at that time. And it took about 5 years and Hesperia suddenly doubled in size and then it just kept growing. But that was my first introduction to Hesperia was, oh, that Main Street, you know, oh, that was Hesperia. And everybody laughed because it really wasn't anything at the time except anything to see that we could see, you know. But anyway, that's my first memory.
You know, that's very important, Ann, because again, time and everything, getting into things. From 1926, a booming Hesperia town goes dormant. There were about 500 people. Then by 1954, when M. Penn Phillips bought it,
Yeah.
there were still about 500 people. Then FX McDonald, and this is via FX, and I'm sure it's sensationalized a little bit, goes to the Arthur Godfrey show, sings Heading for Hesperia, comes back, and that phone is ringing off the wall. Now, that is important because by the number you gave, about 5,000, yes, by about 1960, it had grown from about 400 or 500 to about 5,000. And then it's somewhat stagnated or stabilized into the 80s when things started, 70 and 80s when things started booming again.
Yeah. Well, we used to think that that was the place to go after it began to grow. They had stores in Hesperia that we didn't have in Victorville, so like TG&Y and things like that. So we would go all the way from Victorville to Hesperia to Christmas shop.
Yeah, I used to travel all the way from Pinion Hills over to Bushel Basket to go shopping.
Oh, yes.
Either
Yes.
dirt road or had to go out to 18 and back in
Yeah.
to Bear Valley. Yep.
Yeah. You see a lot in 50 years. It's been 52 years since I moved here. Yeah.
Any other
Thank you.
questions?
Thank you for your information.
You read my chat?
Let's see, this is from Rusty. Hi, Grizz. Our Lucerne Valley history book was based on what we could not do in a limited format. So money was raised to publish on our own, but it took 6 years to complete.
Right, and that's a good point, Rusty, because basically the collection that I have here was basically out of my pocket. I'm sure John Swisher, with his collection as he went, a lot came out of his pocket. In 1996, actually 1993, they had the Hesperia Historic Preservation Committee.
I don't hear
They
anything.
did just things like that to raise money to put up the 15 historic monuments. I have got a proposal that I'll be presenting pretty soon here to Hesperia Rec and Park District to reenact that preservation committee exactly for the reasons that Rusty's talking. Because to
Can you hear me?
perpetuate
On the
the,
screen here? Okay, then I
whether it
can
be
hear.
writing a book or preserving our history through education and stuff, it takes money, more money than I got. And so with that, we can create financial streams to actually build those scale models. I did the first one out of my pocket, primarily majority of it is scrap wood that I had in my shop. But doing the hotel and the rail station and all that, that's going to take a little bit more money. And in order to get it going, yeah, we got to create those financial flows and fundraise. And so I'm working with Rec and Park to do exactly that. And the other thing, since Rusty brought this up, one of the things that we're really working on hard, Rusty is doing a lot with Circle the Wagons and doing her part, but I think there's about 13 or 15, I can't remember the number, of small museums. Lucerne Valley, Apple Valley, Victorville, Barstow, Wrightwood, and kind of networking, because you can go to the High Desert Museum on Apple Valley Road that's now under the control of San Bernardino County Museum. They've got to catch everybody. And so they've got a lot of stuff being in Apple Valley about Roy Rogers and George Air Force Base. But when you get into the outlying areas, not so much. And that's where the small museums come into play, is we can dedicate into our particular area. And through the work Rusty's doing, myself, Marcy Taylor, and several other people to network, to get people going to these different museums. I've got a gentleman, Vandringa is the last name, and his first name is escaping me this moment, but he does a lot of writing and stuff on his travels around the Clip Vandringa. In fact, his brother and sister used to own Old Town at one point in time when Shelley first moved in there. But he does a lot of writing and stuff like that up on the net. There's such a variety out there for writing. It doesn't have to be a book. It can be a travel log. It can be a blog. There's just so much out there. And that's why I'm so happy in being part of this, because I appreciate what each and every one of you do, because I know I can't do some of it. And between all of us, it's a powerful force, writing. Five?
No. I'm going to ask you a question.
Okay.
I'm curious, what's the situation with the different museums and our current COVID situation?
Each one is a little different. Now, the small museums, we're a little different here because we're actually a public entity. And several people have asked me, well, why don't you do that? Why don't you do this? And I'm limited to a certain degree because we are a public entity. Whereas a lot of the smaller museums are small groups of people that have come together to put them in. Now, what we have agreed upon here is we don't have a high traffic flow. We're doing kind of a soft start. We just got our sign out front redone. I'm working on things for the future, but it's like I'm here on Mondays and Wednesdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. If somebody walks through that door, that's fine. If somebody wants to come in as a group, which I have had, like the Mojave Historical Society, we limit to about 10, 12 people because we can spread out within the museum and keep our distancing where our mask is needed, the whole 9 yards, depending on what ebb and flow we're in or this pandemic thing. Hopefully that answers your question, Mike.
Yeah, it does. It does. I'm hoping that maybe when we're all done with things and we're in a better place, maybe we can work with you and set up some kind of a day where we come to the museum, maybe go see a few of the historical sites together. I think that'd be a lot of fun for some of our members.
I would be happy to. Since I'm retired, my schedule is somewhat open or flexible, and let's go for it.
Okay.
Rusty.
Read my chat.
Rusty says that outdoor events only with COVID protocols, small groups of 25. Now, is that for Lucerne, Rusty?
Yeah.
Okay, and then Highway 66 Museum is closed, Ann Miller put. So like Gary said, it probably differs from museum to museum. What
Sorry, that's
what they're
saying
doing.
minor.
Oh, was that?
Minor.
I'm sorry. I'm sorry. Please forgive me.
M-I-N-E-R.
I know. I will learn that eventually. Someday I'll get that
I doubt
right.
it.
Anybody else have a question for Gary's before we thank him and let him go? Jenny, you have a question?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yes.
My name is Alan Reed. I'm also a member of the High Desert Writers Club. I happen to have about 8,000 images of mostly of California, but a lot in Hesperia area. And matter of fact, I have interior pictures of the hotel, including the dining area, the rooms, the main entranceway, whatever. And I would be happy to share them with you if you would like to see them.
Yes,
Not all 8,000, of course.
well, you know, I'm glad you brought that up, and you, it's amazing where you can find things, because I've been doing this history for 20 years now, and to the best of my knowledge, and that is going back to the Hedricks that go turn of the centuries, the Minister family, the Walters family, and to the best of my knowledge, there were no pictures of the inside of the hotel.
There is now.
Yes, I'd be very interested to see them, because the only ones that I know of is there's 3 of them that look similar to this, and this was with Lorraine Contrell Moffett back in 1952 when it was totally dilapidated, and then some outside pictures.
Have you ever heard of L.T. Gotchi?
Yes, sir.
That's my uncle.
Oh, okay. I've spoken to you then.
We have?
Yes, sir.
Okay, I don't recall.
You came from down below when LT passed away. And
right.
You're living in his house.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah, that is something that that would be, I didn't realize LT went back that far. I've got a lot of photographs. Either I've been given by him or by somebody, like some photographs of the Descanso, Summit Valley Rail Station. And it's, I've known of your uncle for years.
Well, we need to get together. I don't want to take away from the rest of these people, but just real briefly, my uncle left me 15 unpublished manuscripts, all historical nonfiction. I've already published 3. My intent is to publish all of them, but I have about 8,000 images taken, and his collection goes back to the turn of the century, to the turn of the 20th century, the early 20th century, all the way up to about 2005. So I'd be more than happy to sit down with you. I don't recall us speaking before. I'm sorry.
Oh, not a problem.
Do you recall the incident?
It was just on the phone. I think you called through possibly Park and Rec, and then I returned the phone call. But yeah, we've spoken briefly.
Okay, well, I would like to, anytime you're available, we can come together. Actually, probably better for you to come to me so you could see what I have. I'm not going to haul 8,000 photos into your office. So
understandable.
You can get my information from like Mike or, well, Jenny. Jenny's my editor, so you can get all my information, like my phone number and whatnot.
Jenny, mine's easy. oldtowngrizz1885 @gmail.com.
Okay. She's also going to send you, what'd you say, a check?
I have to send him a check, yeah.
She's going to send you a check and include my business card.
Okay, excellent.
And then you can call me, whenever. So thank you for taking the time. It was very interesting.
Yeah, it's as I say, so much of these things are a labor of love, and because whatever you're writing, in my case, factual history, it's really, there's no money in it per se. It's simply a labor of love.
I know.
It'd be nice to be a Steven Spielberg and Orson Welles and all that stuff. That's a whole different animal.
Right. So I enjoyed your presentation very much, and I'm looking forward to seeing you.
Thank you, sir.
Take care.
Okay.
All right, if there are any other questions
I have
or
one.
comments,
I have one.
I would
I have
like,
one.
This is
I
Katina.
would like to say that I enjoyed your presentation very much. It was just amazing. Thank you.
Hi, this is Katina. And I had a question about Deep Creek, the hot springs. Years ago, when I worked as a nurse at the old county hospital down in San Bernardino, we had somebody that was admitted that passed away from encephalitis caused by an amoeba from the Deep Creek hot springs. Now, I was just wondering if you knew if that had happened to anybody else. I think they went up there and dumped a couple of gallons of chlorine in it after that, but
Yeah, things change with the water flow so much. No, I do not know of
Okay.
anybody else. I know the water tables change because
oh
the
yeah.
water from Deep Creek is actually, and I'm going to put this simply, is the drain out of Lake Arrowhead. And depending on the water table of Lake Arrowhead, how it flows down, flows in, and anytime things slow down, yeah, there's potentials of a lot of stuff.
Yeah, but that's geothermal, isn't it, or no?
Excuse me?
The hot springs.
Yeah, the hot spring. I've never actually been to the hot springs. I hiked up the flume to where the water begins for the flume, and the hot springs is just beyond that.
Oh, okay. Okay, I was just curious.
Hey,
It's
thank you.
there's warnings now in the hot springs books, that tell people where the hot springs are. They have warnings in those books now. Don't put your head into the water.
Oh,
Yeah, you can sit in them and soak in them, but don't put your head into the water. Thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
well, I'm glad. To be honest, I wasn't sure exactly how this was going to come off in the respects that writing the book is one aspect, the museum is another aspect, but they are blended together because the museum is my research for the book.
Okay.
any last questions before we go? All right, well, let's all thank Grizz for coming today. I appreciate so much. It's funny, when he was mentioning those 8,000 pictures, I've never seen you salivate before.
Let me wipe it off my beard.
Yeah, it was kind of drooling all down your beard. No, thank you so much, Gary. We really do appreciate what you've done for us today and gotten us in touch with our history. I highly recommend Gary's book. If you have not read it, it is quite a tour of history and of Hesperia. Thank you again. Let's all give one last applause, and we will call this meeting finished.
It's
Thank
great
you
to
all for
see
coming.
everybody. Great to see everybody.
And don't forget the 19th, we have a game night.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Gary.
Mhm.